Okay, let's call this meeting to order. This is the planning board meeting, Town of Waldeboro, January 26th. We appear to have a quorum. Item one. Is Sarah?
No, Sarah.
Sarah's not here.
Yeah, Sarah messaged me. She had a work conflict.
Okay. Item two, adjustments to the agenda. I don't think we have any. Not seeing any adjustments. Citizen comments. Is there anybody here that's unrelated to the application for the AD Gray site? We'll just do those citizen comments within the discussion of that.
Residents.
Sure. Yeah. If anybody's here that's not here to talk about the AD Gray school,
Oh,
this would be the time to do it. If you want to talk about the AD Gray project, we're going to start that momentarily. Okay. Item four, pre-application for the multifamily dwelling. I guess to start this off, would the folks from VOA and their design team introduce themselves so we know who's on the meeting here?
Absolutely. I'm Brian. So first of all, thanks for having us. I appreciate you getting us on the agenda for this pre-application. My name is Brian Seitz. I'm the VP of Business Development from VOA, and I've been working on this project for, gosh, Max, what's it been? Almost 3 years, 2.5 years now?
2020.
Yep, 2020. Travis, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Travis Drake. I'm the VP of Housing for VOA. And I've kind of been helping Brian with this since 2020 as well. And then Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob Foster. I'm the architect that's been working with VOA on this project for the last 2 years at least.
And we have one more member of the team, Norm Chamberlain from Walsh Engineering. Max, is he waiting in the lobby or something?
No, the waiting room's been turned off, so we should be able to get in at any time.
Bob, do you work for Walsh Engineering?
No, I don't.
Who do you work for?
I work for myself.
Okay.
Person we're waiting for, Norm Chamberlain, is the engineer with Walsh Engineering.
One of you want to probably just give him.
Yeah, I'm going to ping him right now.
Should be able to just attend using the link that I sent earlier today.
My intent for discussing this was to let the developers team speak first about the project and what they're presenting today. I'm particularly interested in hearing from the design team what specific feedback you're looking for from the planning board and from the community. And then we'll invite the community members to discuss it. I'm sure everyone on the planning board has thoughts about this as well. But if the design team would kick it off, that would be great.
Well, while we're waiting for Norm to show up, and Bob, maybe if you can give him a quick ring, if you have his cell phone, that'd be great. Maybe he's having issues getting logged on. He said he was having some internet issues yesterday after the storm. Anyway, again, just to kind of talk a little bit about this project and the genesis of it, and kind of how we got to where we are. VOA has been working with the town of Waldeboro on this project for a while, as I mentioned. The original intent was for us to preserve the AD Gray School and develop it into 32 to 36 units of affordable supportive housing. We went through, I believe, 3 referendum votes around it, and all of them passed. The last referendum was to unfortunately give us the ability to demo the school and build a new structure on site because we found it to not be structurally sufficient for really any type of use, unfortunately. And so that was a very sad finding. However, it's we still go at this project with the same intent that we came with in the beginning, which is to develop those 32 to 36 units of affordable housing, senior housing, in a way that is both attractive to the neighborhood, feels like it's part of the community, adheres obviously to all the historical and standards that have been set in the historic district, and to do it as having the community play a part in that development process in terms of having feedback and input. Obviously, we can't please everyone with every single item that everyone would like to see, but we're going to try to do our best. Where we are currently with this project is that we understand that we need to get the project pre-development to a point so that we can start applying for funding. We're not private developers. We don't have private funding for these projects, so we have to go after the dollars that are available to us either through the state or through federal programs, and those programs all require us to have the project to a certain point, in terms of design and approval and all that, so that we are competitive for those applications. And so that's why we're starting this process now. It's anticipated the beginning of the spring, we'll start the application process. It's not going to be a single application to one type of funding. Likely, it's going to be multiple types of funding that will come into this project. We've identified, the ones we're going to go after, and we understand what the design needs are for each one of those funding. So now we're coming to the town to kind of talk about the process of what does that look like from both the planning board process and working with the community to get this design over the threshold. So once we do have that funding in place, we're putting up something that the community's behind. We're looking at this as we're going to be neighbors for the next 100 years. And so we want to be good neighbors from the outset. So that's why we're here. So with that, Bob, I'm not sure if you had a chance to get in touch with Norm.
I haven't heard back from him, but I can get started presenting the project.
Okay.
And
do you have access to the documents that Norm sent?
I'll try to put them up here on the screen.
Okay.
You guys can let me know if they pop up there or not. Does everybody see that plan?
Yeah.
We see it, Bob.
Okay. I can start the presentation with that image up on the screen, and I can flip through other ones as we go. Our first task with this project was to determine how we were going to fit this project on the site. As most of you are well aware, this site is fairly small. It's just barely over an acre. And the proposed project that the VOA is proposing here will include 36 apartment units and probably an equal number of parking spaces to meet those needs. So it's a fairly ambitious program on a fairly small site. We needed to make sure you have to have a site that is completely buildable to be able to do a project of this size on such a small site. The building itself was going to be approximately 32,000 square feet, which is approximately double what the existing school currently is. And after the initial sketches of the site, we determined that the only way we're going to get this project to fit on this site was to go with a 3-story solution. Anything less than that, we wouldn't have had enough space to be able to get all the other site amenities, the parking and all the other requirements that we need on the site. So we have to take that approach for a 3-story building, which is doable on this site since the height restrictions are 42 feet. So we do have enough height allowances to be able to get a 3-story building on the site. Once we started looking at the site, we looked at multiple different approaches towards laying this project out on the site. One of the first options we looked at was actually locating the new building towards the back of the site. And this would have put the parking area and the entrance to the building facing the street and just off of the street. However, we determined that we thought that would have a negative impact on the neighborhood, having basically a parking lot up at the top of the hill. Completely foreign to that neighborhood. I mean, it's a residential neighborhood, and putting the parking there and all the cars there, I think would have been a negative thing. So we kind of moved away from that direction. We looked at other ways of placing the building, including putting it closer to the southern end of the site. But because of the scale of the building, the size of the building, and its proximity to the neighbors just to the south of it, we thought that it would overwhelm the smaller residential structures to the south of it. So we opted to place the building on the approximate same footprint of the school and have an L-shaped wing come off of it on the northern side of the site, facing the athletic fields to the north of the site. The resultant layout that we came up with, we believe that it'll have the least amount of impact on the street out front and the existing neighborhood. We're also proposing to push the building back about 10, 15 feet further from the street than the existing school to soften the effect of the building on the street, especially since the building's 3 stories high and it's about 4 or 5 feet taller than the original school that was on the site. When we considered the design of the building, we also considered multiple approaches to the building. And I can start flipping through some of the images that I have here on the screen. Again, we're looking at a 3-story building to fit a small site. So, and with a height restriction of 42 feet. So one of the primary goals was not to overwhelm the neighborhood with this relatively large building. We looked at solutions that incorporated sloped roofs as well as a flat roof that we're presenting here. And we found that the sloped roofs on a 3-story building contributed greatly to the mass of the overall building. And we found that negatively impacted the existing scale and context of the neighborhood. So we kind of lean towards going to a flat roof structure. After I go through all these slides, we can look at some of the sloped roof approaches that we had, but we definitely thought that the size of the roof on a building this size and with a pitch made it almost appear to be a 4-story building, and the mass was just overwhelming for the site. So we ended up kind of leaning towards this flat roof approach. To further address the massing on the building, let me go back, especially along the street, we chose to break up the facade so it wasn't just one massive, brick facade or wood framing or wood clapboard facade across the face. We wanted to break up the facade and alternate materials to kind of break up that facade to make it appear to be, maybe a series of smaller structures all lined up together, almost a feeling of maybe a row house residential type feeling, all tied together with a cornice line up at the top, fairly heavy cornice line across the top to tie all these elements together. And the materials that we're considering at this point are a brick facade, brick veneer, and potentially a wood clapboard or vertical siding on the alternating panels on the face of the building. But that's what we're looking at this point, and that may change over time just with discussions, the materials that we end up using, and the detailing of how we do this may end up changing. The project is located in a historic village zone now. Initially, we weren't aware that change had taken place, but we've become aware that has taken place, that it's part of the village zone. And similar to other historic districts and most guidelines that we work with on other projects, the intent is not to emulate or copy the historic detailing of the neighborhood, but just to be sensitive to the surrounding context. Another benefit that we have found with going with a flat roof on this building is that we're going to have a fair amount of exterior equipment that goes with this building. This building, our intent is to go with an all electrical building. So that will be using heat pumps in all of the units. So we're going to end up with 48 plus or minus condensing units that we need to place. And with a flat roof, we're able to locate those such that from the street level, you're not going to be able to see them. We're also, potentially working with Maine Housing, and their approach is to not only to make the building all electric, but make it compatible to put solar voltaic solar panels on the roof. So it gives us a place to be able to locate those. All of those elements would have been relatively difficult to do if we had gone with a sloped roof on the building. These are just some more images of the building. And I can pop up some images of a sloped roof we had looked at. If I can get to it here. Everybody see that image?
No, if you can stop sharing the screen for a moment and then reshare your screen, that might work.
Okay, let me do that. Yeah. You can tell I'm having problems getting this up. Okay. Now share it again.
Oh, and I see Norm's on now.
Yep, yep.
I apologize. I had this down for 7 o'clock.
No worries.
Can you see that image now?
Yep.
Oh, geez.
Do you all have anything else you want to share about the proposal at this point?
One second, I think Bob's still navigating to show you some examples
Oh,
here,
okay.
and then I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can see the. I think I'm going to let Norm do his presentation now on the site. I'll figure out a way to get the other images up there at some point here.
Norm, if you can give a little introduction, just let everyone know who you are and start on your
Sorry,
segment.
I've got 3 screens here and I was losing stuff. I couldn't find the mute button, unmute button. So Norm Chamberlain with Walsh Engineering. So we've been working on this site plan with the team, Bob and Brian and Travis. So we've got this laid out with about 30 parking spaces in back here. The footprint is very much the same as the existing building, the area with the basketball courts and the parking lot. It does get pushed down a little closer to the tennis courts. But we think that it's all going to work here. Stormwater, because we're basically mimicking the existing site. We haven't run the numbers yet, but we don't anticipate much of a change in stormwater peak rates of runoff. We're looking to send the water down into this swale beside the tennis courts. So it gets down behind this house that's down here. This is going to end up, there's a stream down there. So we don't anticipate any issues with that. It's really a simple site plan. We do have to extend the 8-inch water up the street to get sprinkler service. But other than that, I think everything is right there.
So I guess at this point, Norm, if that's where you want to end it off, and is it okay with you guys? We take some questions from folks from the board. I mean, I think that's what we're here for. So
yeah, it's really a preliminary plan. I mean, we're calling it a sketch plan. If there's something that needs to be changed, we can certainly change it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was sitting on the board, I think 2.5 years ago when you guys came before.
Yep.
And there was some concern I brought up. I guess the building has mold in it. Is that your understanding? There's a fair amount of, excuse me, mold in the building.
And the current structure, potentially, I think that more the concern was the asbestos.
Right.
Yeah, but
I guess to dovetail on that, when you demolish the building, are there any safeguards to address that? For instance, the mold and or asbestos, is there some professional way that you make sure that doesn't get disseminated?
great
Yes,
question.
there's requirements for removal of asbestos and other hazardous materials that the demolition will have to address.
Are you planning to abate the asbestos or demolish the entire building and dispose of the whole thing as asbestos?
I think they'll end up abating the asbestos first because it has to be disposed of in a different manner.
Yeah. It's usually cheaper to do it that way.
So I have a bunch of questions about the site. I appreciate that you guys are pushing the building back off the road, which I think will be helpful just for people walking from Main Street up to the ball fields and whatnot. So I think that is a very good move. What I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question for Max, is your parking lot design kind of cuts off access to the tennis courts. You're really kind of separating yourself from allowing people to come through and use that amenity. So I'm wondering about that. And I'm also wondering, you've got sidewalks coming to the first entrance off of Philbrook, because that is hopefully still going to be an active public use. I'm wondering about, while we're at it here, continuing that sidewalk along in front of the buildings just to improve safety for people walking towards the ball fields and in front of your building, and putting that forward as a question. And I like on your, just as a comment, I like on your plan, you're showing a number of trees. I hope that these are like real trees, but you have a nice long run of them, kind of like in the place where fewest people are going to see them. And I'm hoping that seems like that between the parking lot and the neighborhood, you do have quite a bit of greenery. It seems like an opportunity to screen the building a little bit more than your, well, you're not indicating it on the site plan, just from your.
Yeah,
view.
we haven't gotten into landscaping plans. Normally what we would put in front of the building is some street trees. I don't know if we'd really get into screening on that side.
You've got space to it, and you are trying to be good neighbors, and
Yeah,
it might be a nice thing to do rather than be looking at that big parking lot. Then I might as well continue. I appreciate your breaking up the block by the vertical sections, making it townhousey looking like as you suggested. So my only critique about it is that unfortunately, the way it's depicted here is you're emphasizing the height with the vertical treatment and in between spots, and this kind of stripy effect with the big difference between the brick and the adjacent color. So anyway, that again emphasizes the verticality, and I know that the best comparison for this building is the Sproul Block, which is downtown. That is not a lot of people's favorite looking building in town by any means. But anyway, that's a monolithic brick building, and it does get very boring. So appreciate doing some stuff, but I'm just wondering if emphasizing the vertical is the way you want to go here, if you're trying to make the building settle into the landscape a little bit.
Yeah, we can work with those elevations. See if we can come up with something that works better.
And do you mind if I just, do you mind if I jump in to answer Barbara's question about the parking for a moment? So that
The
falls.
access to the back courts, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So parking does have to be provided to get to those courts, and that's something that has to be discussed with Volunteers of America. We've been in this awkward spot for about, I think, as long as I've been here, about what to do with the courts and the grants and trying to fix it all. And we've always been in this weird position where it always depends what happens with 80 Gray first, because if no one ever came along like Volunteers of America, then we wouldn't have really needed to move forward with it. But now that this is happening and we still will keep the courts, we're just going to have to get alternative parking mostly on the next field to the north of the property, unless we're working with something on Volunteers about that. So that's just a brief answer to all that.
yeah, I was gonna bring up the tennis courts again because we've, I don't want to say we've ignored them, but we don't know what needs to happen with them. They're in pretty poor shape. So they probably need to be rebuilt.
Yeah, and I'll just
So-
add to that, it has been a major point of discussion. Well, not a major point, but it has been a recurring point of discussion with us,
Yeah,
and not kind of knowing what the direction the town is going to take. We've talked about the potential of adding extra parking if the town wants to, rehab those tennis courts. We just do not want to be responsible for the tennis courts in terms of maintenance and ownership and that kind of thing due to the liability. But we are happy to be part of the community and provide access to it in whatever way the town thinks is best. We just need to know what your plans are, really.
So that's all stuff that I'll sort of handle off to the side from here.
No, go ahead.
Well, just one other question. So the lot coverage on this lot is what? The percentage?
it's gonna be about 70%, 60, 70%, I think. It depends on where we draw the property line around the building.
Why don't you know that? Oh, I see, because of the other Crescent Road. Is that why?
Well, we haven't, this is just a sketch plan. We haven't gotten into the details yet, but the intention was this, if I want to share here again. So there, this line right here
Mhm.
is not really a line. It was, I guess there was two lots at one point, but that that property line doesn't really exist. So we were looking to draw a new one to encompass the building and the parking lot. And, you know, we can meet whatever impervious and coverage requirements need to be met for within that lot.
And one other question, the A.D. Gray building has interior drains. Did that originally also head to that stream that you're talking about using now for the stormwater? Is that the original way it?
We're not sure. There's a trench that goes across the parking lot that heads towards the tennis court, and we don't know what that is. The survey didn't pick up any drainage pipes, so we may find something when we get into demolition, but I think Bob said at one point there's a flat roof and there's roof drains and they go somewhere, and we're not really sure where they go. But everything ends up going down this way towards the stream. So what we would be doing is collecting all our stormwater, roof, parking lot, and bringing it down into a level spreader that's down in this area here. That'll this area next to the tennis court is what, about 3 or 4 feet lower than the tennis court, and it ends up going around and into that stream. So that's where the majority of the water goes today, and we would just be mimicking that.
And if I can just jump in on that, I'm about 75% sure that the stormwater actually cuts through the tennis courts, and that's why there's that massive pipe going right through it. That's what John Daigle told me. So that.
Okay.
I got a question for you. Just concerning the demolition, I took a ride past the high school the other day, and it's a very classy. I love that old building, and it had a beautiful sign, Waldoboro High School. Is there any plans to take anything from there or repurpose any of the materials after it's raised?
Well, actually, I don't know if your packet has it included there. I had an image with a potential monument with the flag out across the street.
So that's actually going to be taken from.
And then the intent was to take that from the top of the school there, the Waldoboro High School sign, and incorporate it with brick taken from the building and build that monument there in front of, behind the new flagpole right there. That's just an idea at this point.
Right. Okay.
And there was a request from the Historical Society to rescue the exterior lights.
I don't see why they can't.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I don't know what kind of condition they're in. They're kind of hanging off the face of the building, but I don't know.
Go ahead, please go ahead.
Norm, I do have a question. Your letter you sent out, I know it was a while ago, December 20th. You'd indicated that you were waiting for a response from Maine Historical Preservation Commission. Have you gotten that response yet?
I don't believe we have.
Okay.
I'm gonna just look in my file here, but it doesn't seem like anything has been added to it, so.
Based on what we've heard so far, it sounds like you're going to be asking for a couple of variances when you do finally put the application through. Your coverage is over the 50% limit, I believe, for the historic village zone. The building was going to be a little closer to the road than the required 25-foot setback, I think. If I'm remembering right.
Except in the upcoming revisions that Max suggested, it's 15, if we vote on it in June.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was the other thing I just thought of? Oh, the parking. So I've heard 32, 33, 32 to 36 units. It says that there's 33 parking spaces, I think. We have a requirement for 1 space per unit. And then I would assume that, you know, you would probably want a couple additional parking spaces for staff or whatnot. How many spaces are on the design as it sits right now?
33.
Okay.
I just counted them. Yeah, we went around with Volunteers of America about the parking. They they generally find that they don't need anywhere near one per unit. So with 33 spaces, we have almost that many, but we would anticipate that we would actually have parking for the tennis courts and people that live there and visitors with those parking spaces.
Is the entire building handicap and or wheelchair accessible?
Yes, it'll be fully accessible.
Okay.
There'll be an elevator in the building, so all floors will be accessible as well.
So can I just address one thing? Our architectural historic standards, we don't have them. We say that we should have them for the village, but we don't have any description. And it's kind of a question of, should we flesh these out? People have been around for a while. Know Wiscasset ran into all these problems with their historical society and who's right about what's historic and all that stuff. But our ordinance is very, very, very vague. So in my opinion, the only thing we can do is try to help create a project that fits the scale of the neighborhood as much as possible. And this isn't a big change from, what was there before, because we really have nothing to work with in our current ordinance, which is a shame, but we can, work towards getting a handsome building out of it that's properly proportioned. I just wanted to comment that in case the public doesn't know that we really don't have existing guidelines for historic architecture.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of up to us to bless the design at some point.
Except it's not really our job, because our job is to have it physically meet the ordinances. We don't really have a say in how something gets. We can make suggestions.
Sure.
Yeah,
I look at this building and I don't see 19th century, and I understand that you're trying to build this building as inexpensively as you can, as always. I think that the addition of some features to sort of soften the college dorm feel would be ideal. I guess, are there any other questions from the board on the project at this point?
Yeah, I got one more. I just wanted to know, are there any issues? Because I know that the driveway is going to be shared with a resident. Is there any issues with that? Has that been addressed at all?
We are maintaining that access, and we're trying to make it as, accessible for the neighbor as we can. I think it'll be a little clearer where the driveway is after we get done with it.
Have you had any dialogue with that neighbor yet, or?
We have not.
Can I just make one comment on the previous statement? So, again, these designs are conceptual. We're in early stages, and so we're totally open to feedback. But I do want to clarify one thing: we are not trying to build these units as cheaply as possible. The funding that goes into these, the standards by which we have to build these units, and the certifications and all the things that go into these, typically make them pretty expensive to build. So these are not going to be cheaply made affordable housing units. They're going to be well-made, well-designed units. So I just want to clarify that point up front.
Sure. I probably phrased that poorly.
No.
I have built buildings like this for a long time, and you obviously are trying to get to a point where you can make all of your numbers work, and us piling a bunch of architectural detail into your project that you hadn't budgeted for is obviously going to affect the viability of the whole project. So
right.
That's more what I was trying to say. If there's no other questions from the board.
I just got one more.
Yeah.
this may be out of the scope of this, but so this is considered affordable housing in the town of Waldeboro, correct? In senior housing? What does that mean? Does that mean that residents of Waldeboro who are of a certain age or whatever get a shot at getting one of these apartments? And again, that may be out of this purview, but it just wondering about that long term.
Travis, do you want to take that one? You want me to take it?
It's fine. I mean, typically it would be open to a first come, first served basis based on applications when they're received. So there wouldn't be a preference for like Waldeboro citizens. But I think what you'd find is that a majority of the tenants would come from Waldeboro and the surrounding towns.
We did a presentation to, I forget, Max, remind me, I think it was the select board where we did a review of some of the senior housing facilities nearby. And in Thomaston, for example, I think we found that there were maybe 3 or 4 residents that weren't previously living within like 12 or 15 miles of that facility.
So the presentation that Brian's talking about was done, I think, in 2021 when there was going to be a June warrant question. And the presentation was just letting everyone know about the project a bit more. And they showed that at the Thomaston facility, and I can't remember how many how many people are at the Thomaston facility, but Brian's right. I think about 75% were from Thomaston before moving to that facility. And then except maybe 3, everyone else came from like Rockland, Warren. There was even someone from Waldeboro who lives at the Thomaston facility, but there's maybe one person who lived out of state, one person maybe from Portland before they went to that facility.
I have one more question. So other than the front door, which is basically off the parking lot in the back, there's some seating there, but is that all you're planning for, like outdoor seating for residents? I mean, I'm looking at this, corner facing uphill towards the playing fields. I mean, would there be any other patios, terraces, or gathering spots on the property that at your plans at this
Yeah,
point?
we currently just have the area there on the parking lot. We have a dumpster enclosure and a utility shed down off of the end of the parking lot. There's some lawn area behind that they could use, lawn chairs, things like that, but we weren't planning on patios or amenities other than in that courtyard in front of the building. That's also on the south side, so we figured that would be a little more pleasant.
So here, right?
Should be down on the page.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Morning.
South of the one way,
So the morning people
east of whatever way.
get some sun. Okay.
Okay, if there's,
I was going to say, if we're going to move on to citizen comments, there's been some comments that I've gotten for the past week, and I think everyone was given an email by one resident who's probably watching on YouTube. This is Nancy Van Buren, 16 School Street. She sent an email just voicing some of the comments she had after looking at the review. I'll skip past the brief introduction on it. The points that was raised: 1, historic village zone. The structure is within the zone as defined in the town zoning. The purpose of this zone is to preserve the 19th century character of the area. Submission as presented does not speak to or reflect this purpose, but we've kind of talked about this already. If the argument is to reflect the historical character of the existing school, a style not found in the surrounding residential neighborhood, I would ask in what manner this is achieved, what materials are to be used. How did the proportions, textures, and scale of the building and building elements reflect the current architecture while meeting the historical intent of the zoning? My concern is that the proposed building as presented is simply a modern institutional structure with little to no residential historical character. Again, I think we've kind of already talked about the design already in the scale. Given the current building is set to be demolished and not replicated, is this architectural style still appropriate in this residential neighborhood, especially given the site use is no longer a school/institution, rather now apartments? I think the design and scale and look of it is something that just has to be discussed a bit more. Why are, and then the next one, why are the developers using a flat roof? They've already given an example of what the other roof would have looked like. And finally, site development. Is there any development on the west side of Philbrook Lane, which I assume is the little triangle spot where the old workshop used to be? That's planning board, but the town is going to retain that property. So no development other than the high school sign. Yeah.
Sign and flag.
That was it for that. We get some calls earlier in the week as well. One was a concern about stormwater drainage. A resident was just concerned that their house was going, the basements were going to be flooded if it wasn't properly examined. But Norm already went over the stormwater drainage system, and that is a requirement for the ordinance. And then also the water pressure of the municipal system, that it's not going to be able to handle this as well as everyone else. But again, I think that was mentioned that they're going to have to upgrade the pipes anyway, so that there's more pressure going to the site. And I think for a multifamily dwelling unit, there's a requirement to show that there's going to be a sufficient public water supply in the event of fire. And the last question, I think that was it. That was it.
A little bit of, I understand that this isn't doing that much different than the original school and parking lot in terms of overall runoff that it's creating, but just sort of seems to me that, what was that method Hannaford used when they renovated and they put a strip along towards the water that would catch car pollutants and whatnot before it hit the river, for instance? You probably know what type of thing it is. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, there's a lot of parking lot here, and it will be much better shape than the old cracked parking lot. So, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of water being shed off the property. And I'm wondering if that 15 feet of grass at the edge couldn't be doing something more constructive to collect it before it hits that stream. I mean, I have no information from this, where that stream is, where it's going, and what the potential impact is. So I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Well, the stormwater will be going down through the swale that's beside the tennis court, which is what it's doing. Some of it's doing today. I guess we do have reports that there's a pipe under the tennis court, but there would be a level spreader, which would spread the water out so we don't have a point discharge into that area.
What is a level spreader? What is that?
It's basically a trench in the ground that the water goes into, and it has to build up, and it spills over an edge that spreads the water over 10 or 15 feet instead of just coming out of a pipe end.
So it slows it down.
It'll slow it down. We are planning on catch basins and storm drain pipes on the site. So we'll be eliminating most of the surface runoff that happens today and directing it into, for example, that level spreader.
The only other concern that I would have is just, for future reference, I'm not sure where the nearest hydrant is for that facility, fire hydrant.
Do we have any?
If they've got public water, there should be something nearby, but I just can't remember where the nearest hydrant would be.
There's a hydrant down School Street, I think about 3 houses, and that's as far as the large pipe goes. So there's only like a 2 or 4 inch pipe that comes up School Street from that point. So in order to get a sprinkler system into this building, we're assuming we're going to have to extend the 8 inch line up the street.
Yeah, I thinking about it, it might be advisable to have a hydrant because the fire department is going to have something here. Sprinkler system or, increase the pressure in the sprinkler system in the event of something. So I would like to see something when you're extending that 8-inch main up. It's easy enough to throw a hydrant off from that as well.
I guess we could talk to the fire department about that and see what their need is. There'll be a fire department connection on the building.
Correct, but they've got to hook to a hydrant in order to feed the sprinkler system. So running,
Yeah.
1,000 feet is not advantageous when we're in the construction phase. It's easy enough to put a hydrant right in.
Right. We can talk to them about that, see if they need that closer. I think it's about a couple of 100 feet or less from the existing building.
I'll reach out to Chief Smeltzer about this.
Okay. Let's open this up to community comments. Yeah, would you, do you want to come up to the podium?
No,
No?
I'm ready.
That's fine. All right. Can you, would you share your name with us, please?
Sure, Lorraine Rossio. It says EEL, 20 Shady Ave.
Please.
Okay, so I appreciate your input about the fact that it's a historic neighborhood. That really is my thoughts about some of the design of the building. At least I know you're thinking about that and you're aware of that. I appreciate that. My concern is the traffic flow coming in off of Main Street and going up School Street. The street is very narrow. It's congested now, in fact. And I'm just wondering, where's that traffic flow going to go? Do you have plans for that, or are we going to use the very narrow streets that we have now? Or what's up?
Was that ever addressed in earlier talks about that? The towns,
About School Street?
yeah, I mean, if they're going to be extending the water main, I don't know. If there's gonna be some construction on School Street, has the town talked about, potentially widening that, or is that even an option for that? Because I do know it is.
I think we'd have to look at all the easement rights that are down there.
Right. I think a lot of the houses are fairly close to the road, if I'm not mistaken, as well, which would make it difficult to even widen that, so.
I'm curious how that was back when that school was being used with bus traffic and parents dropping kids on and off. But I suspect there's a fair amount of traffic in those days. I don't know about now.
Well, when you consider there'll be, 37 units. So there's that additional traffic. And then the cut throughs from, a lot of people don't like to go down Main Street. They'll cut up through, what street is that, Glidden?
School. Wait,
From the back end, Glidden?
Comes up the hill.
Yeah, it comes up the hill. A lot of people cut through there. So I'm concerned about the traffic flow, and I was wondering if there's a plan in place.
I share your concern because when you get the demolition, you're gonna have all that activity with the trucks and that. So that would exacerbate that condition. So that's an excellent point.
So when would you be discussing that part of it, or is that after the fact or during, or?
Well, I don't think the town has a plan on any road work presently. So, and I don't know if, I guess Max, you could bring it up with John Nagel and see if that's part of the long-term plan. But like I said, the school used to be a pretty active place with buses and drop-offs and staff and all that stuff happening in that neighborhood. And, you know, it does have multiple, it's kind of nice. It actually has at least 3 different ways that you can get out of this area back to Jefferson or Main Street. So in some ways, it's a pretty good site for this kind of thing. And as the gentlemen have been saying, it's not going to be 36 active car users on this property, you know, right? What was
Same
what was the
time.
number? Some percentage of people will have cars, but, and I would think there'd be a lot of people like, you know, friends who jump in each other's car to go to Hannaford's because, you know, they become friends living in a situation like this. So it's not going to be 36 active cars every day, I don't think, is certainly my impression from this particular project.
And if I can just jump in on your question on when this would be discussed, the point of a pre-application is to raise some of these initial concerns now, just when we're at the concept stage, so that it is taken into account for the final application that I don't have a timeline for right now, but everyone in the neighborhood who's received a notice already would still receive the same notice, and the abutters as well. So between now and that point, the discussion would happen and hopefully the point would be raised.
I'm just thinking about like the Waldorf Theater when it has something going on.
Very busy. There's a proposed inn bed and breakfast for up to 18 people, which is about 9 more cars. There's parking issues there.
Right.
So,
You know, I think that one of the things about the town is when we did the, what was that whole process called that we,
there's so many downtown master plan, the comprehensive plan.
the comprehensive plan. I mean, there was a lot of people's interests were to make the villages dense, more dense than it is now. You know, that's not it's not rural. It's a town and it's a village, and people wanted to see, a lot of people, most people want to see activity and, you know, jobs and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So
As long as there's enough
as long
road
as it's
space to
safe.
navigate.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right. And as long as it's safe, you're absolutely right. Maybe we have to have some more blinking lights or more stop signs or something down the
Well, the
road.
streets are very narrow.
Yep.
And it's even hard to get by in the snow, when people are parked out in the street. Coming off of Main, it's dangerous because if you're coming around the corner and there's 2 cars parked on either side, it's a problem.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, you know, and if you're concerned about that kind of thing or additional businesses coming in and parking, you know, get a petition going or something, because right now businesses don't have to supply their own parking spaces to support their business. I mean,
Depending
there
on
are
the
some
district.
town lots and stuff.
Right, depending on the district. If it's the
Yeah,
historic
depending.
village, they have to do it. If it's the downtown, they don't have to
Right.
provide parking.
So,
thank
There-
you.
There's a traffic impact analysis that's required as part of the application. I forget what triggers that. I don't know if that would be required for this application.
Pull that up. I was about to say that might probably gonna come up. Yeah, 9.1 traffic impact analysis, demonstrating the impact of the proposed project, the capacity, level of service, and adjacent street and safety of adjacent streets shall be required if the project or expansion will provide parking for 50 or more vehicles or generate more than 100 trips during the AM or peak hours, based on a book that we have in the back office.
Was that it? Thank you. Who's next?
Benville, I live at the end of Filbert Lane. Butter. And I can speak to the traffic at the school. I was principal. My concern, I can totally understand what you're saying. My concern is I would like the town to look at maybe signage on School Street that says no parking either side.
Mm.
Because we have people that have just moved to town, and I'm thrilled we have new neighbors, but frequently the road is nearly impassable because they're using the street instead of their own personal parking. And I don't know what the process of that is, if I need to come to other meetings or petition somebody, but I think that something about no parking either side on School Street would take care of a lot of the issues we're having right now. I've met people, they're very nice, but it's just, especially if you're coming down over the hill and taking the right and you encounter a vehicle, if you slip, you're taking them out. So that's sort of a side issue, but it relates to what my neighbor was saying. In terms of the building itself, I applaud the use of the sign from the school. I would like to see two other things to relate to the historical nature of this building that was built in 1935. I'd like to see some way to incorporate one of those arches that are the doorways in the front to mimic what's there now. And I also, inside one of the entryways in the front is a plaque which speaks to the history of the site and the fact that before it was a school, it was a church. And I think whether that's one of those museum in the street signs or taking that plaque and mounting it outside next to that Waldboro High School sign, something like that, so people can appreciate what was there. I applaud the building. Any negative from it being 5 feet taller is totally outweighed to me by having a beautiful new building instead of a building that's become derelict for 15 years. I'm greatly looking forward to the new neighbor. That's all I have.
Brian and everyone on Zoom, were you able to hear that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else in here have comments on this?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Cynthia Conner, I live on 12 Shady Avenue, around the corner. Earlier, you showed a picture of a different building with more horizontal lines and 3 colors, and the roof was extended. Is that a possibility, or is this the permanent image that we'll be looking at for the building?
Well, as of right now, they're talking about a few different options with this.
Will we be able to vote on that, or which one we like the best, or how does that work?
I don't believe that is the case. I can't imagine how we would possibly do that. This is the venue basically for you to voice your opinions about it.
So the image that they put on the screen tonight.
But this is a schematic. This is a pre-application. This is just early.
Right.
This is the first time we've even seen what it looks
Oh,
like.
okay.
So it's very, very early. If you're suggesting that you prefer that, this would be the time to tell the gentleman.
Yes,
but-
the angled roof picture with the more of a, the 3 horizontal colors or different materials that were used.
One thing about the pitched roof is that it does eliminate the possibility of them putting solar on the roof, which I just think would be fabulous. if they could
And the
do that.
HVAC system as well.
They
It
could
better-
emphasize the corners more than this drawing is showing here. It looked like your pitch roof actually had brackets on the overhang or whatever, but
Yeah, they're all conceptual at this point.
yeah.
You know, we
Anyway,
weren't-
having the solar, I think would be so great.
Yeah, and all of that would be fine. It's just, I guess, instead of having those vertical blocks, if you could just change the facade to the 3 stripes, maybe, of different materials, it might soften the look a little bit.
Need some softening, gentlemen.
Yeah. Just a little. And I did have one other comment just about Filbert Lane. If you extended that down to Route 1, or if you could someday do that, that might help with traffic flow as well. I noticed.
Extend beyond the field, you mean?
Down, just go straight down, all the way down, you
Yeah.
come to Route 1.
What do you think, Bob?
I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
See if DOT approves an access point. You know, actually, set it up, yeah.
Or the
Yeah,
people who own the
Good.
property, yeah.
That's my property. That's for the offer, though.
It might be very valuable.
Make a deal.
Yeah.
Well, you three can talk about that outside this meeting along with the parking ban that he was just suggesting.
We could also talk about one-way streets. Regulation, if that ever became.
Yeah, yeah, that was my thought too.
Yeah. You know.
They closed. Yeah. Wonder why.
Oh, great. This just means I'm gonna have to all work with the select board later now.
Is there anybody participating online that has any comments they'd like to share?
Oh. If you want to just call on one of them, I think they're.
Oh, is that what the hand is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dana and Laura, would one or the other of you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, my name is Dana Marcus. I'm at 71 School Street, just across from the property. Myself and the neighbors, we all like the design. We're looking forward to the property change. But my biggest concern and all the neighbors' concern would also be the parking. I work for Lockheed Architectural Solutions. I've seen a lot of traffic impacts reports and statistics, and I know we're saying that 1 per unit is probably sustainable, but from a history that I've been in construction, it's usually not. And the largest impact we're going to have is traffic on the street. I would not like to see the street reach the Route 1. I think that would cause more issues. And just looking at my notes here, one of my biggest concerns would be during construction, the equipment, site equipment, noise. Would it be like a curfew for what time the job site should close down, what the hours of operations would be, and would it be adequate parking for the construction employees? I think me as a neighbor and the rest of our neighbors wouldn't want our street swamped with construction vehicles, employee vehicles of construction workers, and then also having heavy equipment go up and down the road. We're going to have tractor trailers coming down, and like many people have spoke already, this road is very narrow to begin with. And that's all I have for this. Thank you.
So to answer your question, Dana, there will be hours that the construction will be limited to as part of the permit. It's usually, I think it's 7 to 4, 7 to 5.
The noise standards say limited to 6:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., but the board can always make a more strict condition based on the comments.
Yeah. The construction parking is an interesting point. It's something that we wouldn't really necessarily handle as the planning board, but there will be vehicles parked on the street at some point. You're absolutely right. There'll be tractor trailers coming down your road pretty frequently, cement trucks, all that stuff. It's a sort of inevitable part of the construction process, unfortunately. But keeping the construction vehicles parked off the street is something that could be worked on. Laura or Rebecca, do you have any comments?
I do. Laura, if it's okay if I go.
Please.
Okay, I lost sound for some reason, but first off, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to the developer for showing an interest, and thank you to the board. Dana and I just moved here last July, and I'm already impressed with the board's questions. So thank you for being so thorough and diligent and forward-minded. So I just wanted to second that the architecture is not immediately pleasing, that the vertical emphasis, I think, is something that should definitely be taken away, revised. Let's see, and then parking, you know, Dana and I come from a very urban area where parking is a major, major problem. And we were delighted to be away from that. And so we're not overly excited to be facing possible more issues with that. There's also, I believe, some kind of, we don't know if it's a bed and breakfast at the end of the road that's happening on School Street and Main Street. But and we're very excited about it. In no way is this a complaint. We think it's amazing, but that is going to bring more issues with parking. So the board seems forward-minded, and it seems like you will already be talking about that and dealing with that. So we appreciate it. And then
Wait, the
I
rumors
guess that's
fly.
it. Oh, did I hear something about a variance being requested so the building could be closer to the street of School Street?
It's being set back further than the school is now.
I can't hear it. Sorry, 1 second. I don't have audio. Okay, if you could just repeat that.
Looking at the plan, it's being set, the new building's being set back further than the school is now.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Can I quickly say something on the bread and breakfast? Because it keeps coming up, and it's actually
Jeez.
funny enough, it was actually going to be brought up later in the meeting during next agenda items and stuff. I've actually been contacted by the person who wants to do the bed and breakfast and wants to come in for a pre-application. He's not doing 18 units or anything. It's going to be, his daughter lives there and he wants to do maybe 3 units
Yeah,
right now.
It's a small.
Right. And he has 3 or 4 different alternative parking plans ready, so people aren't parking on the street. So if you're interested in that, well, we'll
Stay
talk about
tuned.
that later. Yeah.
Every time someone passes on that story, the number of rooms increase doubles. So I had one other question, or I just throwing this out there, what you brought up about parking on the side of the road instead of all that grass in front. Does it make sense to provide some, taking away some of that and put parking as part of the front? I just throwing it out there. Then you'd have one side just in front of the building. I mean, I hate to lose the greenery, but
They would end up having to back onto Philbrook Road.
back onto it. No, I meant a parallel parking, parallel to the building. It would only
Oh.
be 4 or 5 spots maybe.
Well, the other,
Yeah, the greenery's nice.
well, I think a few months ago, I think Brian went to the select board and was giving some different concept ideas. And one of them was to have some parking expanded to the field just north of it. That would be the town-owned one that could sort of be, to make the two sort of a shared parking lot idea. And I think we just need to
Or
talk
the
about that.
town could develop it for the field,
Right.
you know, so, yeah,
That's all stuff.
park.
That's all stuff I'll just get into talks with right now.
Any other community comments?
Any more hands?
Was expecting more of a turnout tonight.
Yeah, so was I. Okay. Any final comments from the development team? Any questions that you have for us that we haven't talked about?
I
think
think I'm
so.
all set. We
Okay.
just want to reiterate, thanks again for your time. We are taking the comments, please, Max, continue to forward stuff onto us as you get it. We'll try to incorporate everything that we can, within reason, obviously. Can't, like I said, we can't incorporate everything and please everybody on every single point, but we'll do our best.
Just one quick comment, if I could. I think there's been some excellent comments and suggestions by the board and the people and you guys. But I just think it underscores that this is a fluid process, correct? I mean, as far as like economics and if demographics change, it's not like you guys are locked into any one plan. You can kind of adjust it or tweak it, your plan. Is that fair to say?
Definitely.
It's been pretty consistent though over the last year and a half. Still an L-shaped building and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
about the same number of units. Quite consistent.
Good. Well, thanks, folks.
Thank you. Have a great
We'll,
night.
See you soon.
Thank
When-
you.
When will we see you? How long is this gonna be?
That's a good question.
Months, I would imagine.
It's gonna be a year and a half. To get on.
Thanks.
All right. I'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks, folks.
The rest of the agenda, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
So far, the meeting minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to make a suggested change, but we could probably vote on it. Does anybody else has any? I didn't have a chance to write it down.
That's probably.
Remember what I do is send it back to you and Max and Seth and Susan. And it would maybe show up for this meeting, but.
Sure.
That's explain what it was. but-
Yeah. I did. I haven't had a chance to read this. This is supposedly incorporated the changes that I had sent.
Why don't we wait till February? I have some suggestions and.
That's fine.
Anything on this?
Yeah. To do a motion for this.
No, because I didn't really have these minutes specifically there. I just had the 4 items in case we wanted to make adjustments to the agenda or anything. But
Okay.
I've known in the past that for pre-applications, sometimes it goes 2 hours and we just don't want to add anything afterwards. So I don't know our rules.
All right. Old business. Seems like a good opportunity to discuss the land use ordinance changes.
I didn't know if they wanted to do a full dive into those or if you just wanted more of the 1,000 feet off the ground type thing if this changes.
So I saw one set had the date on it. I had a couple different sets and I don't know the dates on them. One, this is 123, is that the one that has your suggested lot size changes for rural district?
Yeah, so 2023 version is the most up-to-date version. And because of the LD 2003, the only changes I'm making is just having the lot sizes consistent throughout the districts, or at least the ones that have sewer and water accessibility. And that's pretty much it. I'm not changing. Like if you're not on sewer and water, the road frontage and the minimum lot size is going to be the same, 80,000 square feet for the rural, residential, Route 1A, and the industrial. But if it is on sewer and water, then it would drop down to 5,000 square feet, which is what the village, rural village, and the Route 1B areas have.
And in that scenario, like the chart I had did not say what also the suggested road frontage was.
The road frontage,
If it went to 5,000, what would the road frontage be?
the road frontage would be 50 in all areas except Route 1 Commercial A. That would be 75,
50 feet?
50 feet, because that's what rural village has, village has.
I don't have that at all. I don't have that one. What's it, 123?
Yeah.
So here's the deal.
Mhm.
This is the only thing I have to look at for what's rural.
Mhm.
And then there's the water and sewer thing that you sent to everybody.
Mhm.
What properties really are affected by doing this? What I'm concerned about is that you have a bunch of 50 feet wide lots, a bunch of driveways coming out, you know, tight lots on what areas are actually impacted. Do you have some sort of overlay that we can look at that see what the repercussions of making small, I mean, I can see, does this end up changing our subdivision rules at all? Because this seems like it would introduce like a lot of interest in subdivisions. If you could have 5,000 square foot lots.
With how the sewer and water is laid out now, I think the only change would be Depot Street. Because,
That's the only rural area that has public water and sewer.
and even then, the sewer ends, if we're going out on Depot Street right now, the sewer ends at the railroad tracks. Beyond that, it's just municipal water.
But you don't think people would lamb chop a lot that goes deeper and create, do a tee off? I mean, it seems like it would be really encouraging development, dense development.
That could only be between Route 1 and railroad tracks, right?
Right, that's where it pretty much ends on rural. And then on 32 for Winslow's Mills, the sewer ends at Sheepscott Therapy, but I don't even think the water goes up that far. And that's just Route 1 Commercial A district. And if we're going south on 32 to Bremen, sewer and water ends, I believe, at McGreevy's, maybe even a little south of that. And then
So
two-
Cider Hill, for instance, would become a very dense place.
even without these changes, Cider Hill would have been able to make these change. Cider Hill would have been able to split up to 5,000 square feet even before these changes.
Because of subdivision. Because
Be-
of why?
Because it's on sewer and water. So that could have been split into 5,000 square foot acres, 5,000 square foot lots even before these changes happened.
It could have, based on what though?
The schedule of dimensions requirements, if you look at your current ordinance,
I'm trying to find it.
here,
That's not it.
I'll pull up the current one.
That's not it.
This is the current ordinance.
Oh,
So this is what we currently allow anyways.
because I was in the village. Okay.
But you see what it is right now for the other areas. And if we're going south on 220 to Friendship, the sewer and water ends at the Hoff's house.
Mhm.
And if we're potentially selling that lot, as the survey in November showed, people being interested in selling the Hoff's house off with the minimum lot size. Right now, we would have to sell off 80,000 square feet or 2 acres. But if we made the change, it would be just 5,000 square feet, which would just be the Hoff's house and maybe a little bit of the
It would
backyard.
become 2 lots. It could be 2 lots or
Right.
more.
It would be 2 lots, but that Hoff's house property might go to a private individual, whereas the rest of the 9 acres would stay under the town's ownership. And that's the only real example of industrial change.
I guess what I'm saying, Max, is I would like to see a better
A map to show what the changes would be like.
where it's happening,
Okay.
where it might happen. And we do have a larger thing that's mounted, right, somewhere in your office. that
Yep,
we
it's
could
in my
look at.
office, yeah.
Because of those repercussions. I mean, once you start 5,000 square foot in a sorry, the road frontage
Rural and residential
was-
area.
So he just gave me this, but what is the road frontage for? If we went to 5,000 square foot, what would the road frontage be? It's crossed out.
It would be 50 feet.
50 feet. So you're comparing your public water and sewer rows. So if you public water
Okay.
and sewer,
Yep.
50 feet, 5,000 square feet.
I mean, the road frontage is something that I just put in there so it could be consistent, similar to what the minimum lot size was. I don't mind leaving the road frontage as is, if people would like.
Yeah, or if it's rural, it maybe should be a little bit more.
Okay.
of it. But again, it sort of depends on where and where this might happen. That's consistent with the rest of the neighborhood, I would think. People would prefer.
Yeah, the math on road frontage size versus lot square footage. If you have too large a requirement for road frontage, then you end up with a very shallow lot.
Yeah. And with the 20-foot rear setbacks and the side setbacks, you were
Yeah.
postage stamp for doing anything with.
I'll get that map to show the areas that would be impacted by that.
What was the on between public water and sewer, or sewer only or water only, the difference between what we propose, 20,000 versus 40,000 square feet between sewer only and water only. How do you make that determination? Yeah.
As I said, the change is just so it's consistent with what the village and rural village and Route 1 Commercial B shows right now.
Okay. Yep.
But it almost seems like it should be the reverse, doesn't it?
I can talk with Stan to see what would need more land, a private well or a private septic, to see what he would say on that.
Now, if you have if you're not dealing with a leach field, which in the septic system, which isn't going to affect your neighbor, then you could, because it's being dealt with a town, you could have a smaller lot.
Right.
That's
That's what I can check with Stan about. What would need more lot size, private septic or private wells.
So I would imagine it would be private septic due to the footprint of the leach field and everything else.
Right.
Yeah, the well is usually just a distance away from the septic. So
The difference is that you have a much greater setback requirements for the well locations than for the septic locations. You can put your septics pretty close to your lot lines. If you have a septic on site, you have to be, I think it's 75 feet at least away from with the
100
well.
100
If you
feet
got
from
a
the
body
well,
of
yep.
Water, you gotta stay away from that as well. And it's much easier to fit a septic onto a site than it is a well a lot of times because of the setback requirements.
So I'll talk with Stan a bit more and I'll get the map to show the lots that would be impacted and have it for the next meeting.
On your change to 6.6, Max.
Yes.
Purpose of districts shall not be construed to supersede the schedule of uses. If we're in a situation where we have a use that's not neatly falling into a category,
Mhm.
it would seem to me that as board members, and we're trying to make a decision as to whether or not the use is allowable, the intent of the district, which is provided in 6.6, the purpose of the districts, would be the thing that would guide us. If the matrix is superseding this, right, that makes it sort of confusing to me.
Yeah, I think
this was supposed to guide the matrix. That statement
right.
guides how we develop the matrix.
Well, part of the reason I threw that line in there was just because of the gravel pit, as well as I think even now just saying, well, this is what the purpose says, so it shouldn't be allowed, even though the matrix says who can give a permit on it. That's a bit of the confusion I'm getting rid of.
Okay.
But yeah, if the sentence just muddies it even more, then I'm fine just getting rid of it. It was more of a last minute addition than anything.
Okay.
So I'll strike that.
I had a couple other questions in here. 10.1.1. It's talking about accessory apartment owner must provide written evidence to municipality that unit is connected to water and wastewater. Further on in 10.18.7.2, provide specific requirements for what that proof is.
You want me to move those under the accessory dwelling? as
I was
well?
just, some clarity about what the proof is going to be, I think would be useful. Because if it's just the owner of the property writing a letter and signing their name on it, seems like a little more diligence might be required there.
So I'll include those examples under 10.1.1 as well.
That's all the comments I had on it.
So I have something that, as you know, Max, I've been struggling with for a while, but I didn't know how to word it so recently. Some of the things that are allowed to go to you and Stan.
Yeah.
It tends to be what doesn't come in front of the planning board, and I figured out what I have a hiccup with is, if a business is transitioning from one to another business and it's fairly similar, why does it have to come from the planning board?
Right.
Is there a way, in my mind, the difference would be if the new business increases traffic? Well, because that impacts neighbors, and so is there a way to kind of sort through that, or have that be a thing that would kick it back to the planning board? And or if the hard surfaces of impermeable surfaces increase a certain percentage? Those are the two things that I think that normally you change from one business to another, fine, but
Right.
if
But traffic though.
traffic or parking increases, then maybe it should be dealt with in a more public setting.
So
Does that make sense?
yeah, that does make sense. And Article 3 from the notes that we made back in November would hopefully address that, where Stan and I would determine if the application is complete. The members of the planning board, as well as the abutters, would be notified of the application. You don't have Article 3 with you right now, because that was addressed back in November, and this was going to be more focused on LD 2003 tonight,
Okay.
actually. But if Stan and I got a complete application with the revisions that are being done, the planning board would be notified of that application as well as the
You're sending
abutters.
out packets to us as well?
It would be emails,
Email you.
but we would just say there was a complete application. We think it addresses all these points. And if anyone on the planning board does believe there's a traffic impact and should go to the planning board, hi, Ben. Thanks. Then a member of the planning board could request a public hearing and then would automatically go to the planning board. Or even if Stan or myself said, just looking at it, wow, they're gonna turn, but the bed and breakfast, let's use the bed and breakfast, for example. If the bed and breakfast, we were concerned about the parking, we just say, well, yeah, that addresses the minimum, but what about the overflow? We should probably send it to the planning board because they're talking about all these different alternatives. And we probably don't even need to send all the packets out to you at that point. We just send the application to you. So there is guidance methods so that the neighbors would still be able to weigh in on the application and the planning board can still weigh in on the application.
If we raise our hand in time.
Right. There would be about,
That's a lot of
I
ifs.
think you would be notified of it and given 2 weeks to raise a concern.
Well. Yeah. The other question I have, some of these parking spot requirements,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about that too.
like 3 chairs.
At least 2 parking
spots for
spaces
each
for
barber's
3.
shop chair. Is that
You're
your?
talking about.
you're talking about the old-
10.18.7.4.
No, I think you're talking,
I'm talking
Barbara, you're talking about,
9.3,
Oh,
yeah,
13.3,
um,
0.9.
everything there.
Is that from the state?
The only state item is the red one. I haven't touched any of those other parking requirements, which I think we've had since 2005.
Is the what? The what one is the only?
The affordable multifamily one, that's the only one that I'm putting in because that's a state requirement. Or that's going to be a state requirement. Bob left, so I imagine I can safely talk about LD 2003.
I don't seem to
yeah,
have
so
that.
that's the same one as 10.18.
Yeah.
It's the same language. I just have concern that 2 spaces for every 3 dwellings. I don't know how they're
Oh, trust me, everyone's raised that point.
right.
Any town that does not have a public transportation system has raised this point.
I mean, is that a standard that we have to follow with the LD?
That- Real. It's not the first time I've heard those thoughts. terms of trying to make LD 2003 compliant with Town of Waldeboro's ordinance, it's pretty much 2 or 3 sections that are changing. And it's just including this affordable housing segment under the multifamily dwelling section, 10.18.7. So that it outlines what a developer has to do to get those incentive bonuses that Mark just pointed out, or the density bonuses as well. And then I didn't know any other better way of phrasing it, but 10.37, which I just titled LD 2003 until we have a different title for it now. That's just addressing the dwelling units that can be built on undeveloped lots that are in growth areas in the town of Waldeboro, which is explained in our comprehensive plan. Again, I tried my best to make everything almost word from word what the state statute says.
Definitions. Tiny house has a maximum square footage, still on a movable chassis, but should we be designating how wide these things can be? Because it might move.
Yeah,
And it seems like if it's built on a movable, something that seems like a movable chassis, but is.
I can check with
What's
MMA.
the difference between that and a
RV. Yeah, I can check to see with MMA if we can make that type of revision as well. I've just been trying to follow what the state has on its statutes right now, but I'll see if we can add that. And I think for accessory dwelling unit, I put in a size limit of like 750 square feet, just because the state doesn't put a maximum size limit on it, and I've confirmed this with 2 or 3 different attorneys on the subject, which means theoretically, someone could have like a tiny little shack that they call their primary house. And because they get their free accessory dwelling unit that's not impacted by the density, they could have like a big mansion right behind them, and that's considered an accessory dwelling unit. So I figured 750 would be a good safe number, that's a
Well,
mobile home, that's it.
if it were to be, so that's completely different than if you put an apartment above a garage.
Accessory dwelling unit would still be that, yeah.
Garage
Yep.
unit would be accessory building. So a 3-car garage would be more than 750 square foot, for
Well,
instance.
no, because you're talking about just the living space where that,
Yeah, I'm talking about the footprint of a.
In other words, if you
3-car garage.
change the use of that garage to a living space.
yeah, I
Or
mean,
or even 24 by 32 foot garage would be 768 foot potential living. So
Yeah.
I'm saying 750 is maybe a little squeaky.
okay. Well, I just threw out the number. I'm fine going higher, whatever the planning board would like to do. I would just like to have some maximum size limit, just because 5,000. There we go.
5,000?
Joking.
It's too late for jokes.
No, we still got 20 minutes.
Well, I'm gonna throw it 800.
800.
Curious if there's a precedent somewhere, somehow, for something like that.
I wish there was.
You've probably looked a lot for that and it doesn't exist.
Oh, 800 square feet. Didn't know if anyone else had some suggestions for changes, and I do remember Barbara's suggestion on small campgrounds, having that all go to the planning board. So that's, but as I said, I just wanted to focus on LD 2003 for this one.
And I did want to bring up potentially having the board talk about better defining the noise and how we measure that, and what are the Because it's very vague when we get to that. Is it a one-time noise shot that we're talking about? There's other issues that come into play. Where do we measure the sound levels from? So
Okay.
I think we, at some point, need to have a conversation, not necessarily tonight, but
So I'll include some changes to the noise section as well.
Yeah, I would think that the average number or how often that sound occurs and all, whether it's in a rural district or another district would make a big difference to someone running a business. Okay.
So were there any other thoughts? And Susan sent me her changes as well. They're the technical, grammatical, and functional ones that I always mess up on. So I'll get that addressed out of this.
To the minutes, you mean?
No, for the amendments to the ordinance.
Oh, okay.
So I'll make those changes and then I'll try and see if I can have something by the next meeting.
Oh, I have one more question next, sorry, on our matrix. This is the 12/1/22
Okay.
version, but on 6-3, what do those last two things mean? Uses similar to allowed uses. I
Oh,
mean, uses similar to uses requiring singular approval. I mean, is this just redundancy?
no, those were included just because if you're getting someone who's like strict to the book, they might look at, let's say, barber shop, and you come in with a salon offer, with a salon proposal. Well, they should be similar, but one's a barber shop, one's a salon. Someone might see as a difference, whereas similar uses, it just says they're both dealing with hair, just put them together.
Okay.
Next meeting? Oh, that's mine. Yeah, you could just leave it.
So, any other comments on the land use ordinance changes? Item 7, comments from planning board members. Any other related comments?
As I said earlier, for February 9th, I will have the single family home for 370 Hendrickson Lane. This is the guy who wanted to do it at the resource protection zone.
Yep.
That had the pre-application, I think, in November. So he's coming before, he's submitted everything and he looks good to go. And as I said earlier, the individual who wants to do the bed and breakfast would like to do a pre-application just because he wants to be sure he's doing everything right now. I don't know if you want me to throw that in at the end of the February 9th meeting, or if you want to.
Yeah, let's do them at the same meeting. We didn't really have a lot of questions aside from the sort of odd septic solution that he had, as I recall.
Yeah, and you'll see what he's proposing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see why we can't do both of those in the same meeting.
Well, no.
If there's no other business, we have a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second.